Cool. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us for this webinar series. We have a very interesting topic as well as a guest who's going to talk about a lot of interesting things. We've been getting so many questions from a lot of people, especially our students who are preparing for their GMAT and applying this year. These are questions that are on their mind, and the focus of this session is to see what we can do to address these questions and clear your confusions around what you need to do after your MBA, and how do you need to strategize your entire career journey, right? So before I get started, if you could all just put in the chat window if you can hear me well, and if I'm loud and clear, if you could just put that on the chat window. Awesome. Thank you, Jagtej. Thank you, Monica. Sonakshi, Gunjan, awesome, very good. And if you could also tell me where you're joining in from, that's also a very interesting drill I enjoy doing. So if you could also tell me where you're joining in from, awesome, Gurgaon, Bangalore, Kolkata, Chennai, Jaipur, Pune, wow, I've not even got one repeat city yet. So that's interesting, Mumbai. Welcome, Arjun, Siddesh. Awesome. Thane. Okay, great. So great. So we are also on YouTube Live, which means all those who are have subscribed to us on YouTube can hear us and take get the right information from this session, right? So all right. So let me get started. A quick introduction about myself. I'm Shrikala. I'm the co-founder of Crackverbal. I'm also the chief mentor, which is the MBA admissions coach here at Crackverbal. I've been part of the Cherry Play Foundation, where I help women entrepreneurs across the world. I'm also a fellow of the ISB Goldman Sachs program. I have been an engineer. I started my career as an engineer, and then now focusing completely on Crackverbal and building and expanding the business. Right. I would also like to introduce Harish. Harish is our speaker for today. Harish, if you could just quickly introduce yourself and tell us about your background in brief, because I have a lot of questions for you. So, maybe you could just give us a short intro for now.
Excellent. I'll firstly thank you, Crackverbal team. Thank you, Shri. And thanks to all the MBA aspirants who have joined today in the call. I'll try to be as brief as possible on my intro, and any questions that you need in terms of clarification of my background, I'll be happy to elaborate on that. So to introduce myself, my name is Harish Nimala. I have a bachelor's degree in chemical engineering. Thereafter, moved to the US to pursue my master's in chemical engineering. And my educational journey, the last one that I've had was an MBA at Cambridge. And right now I'm working in the business strategy team at Saudi Aramco. And hopefully we can have more of these sessions in the future and clarify any questions related to Cambridge thereafter.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much, Harish, for a quick introduction. Before we get on to, the whole session, a few quick rules. All of you, please put your questions on the Q&A window. We will definitely try and address all your questions. We will be taking these questions at the end, because we would like to make sure that we go through the flow of what we want to. I've made a list of all the questions that I have to ask Harish. So in the end, I will make sure that I'll address all the relevant questions which is in the scope of this webinar, right? So we'll definitely, and I'll also give you information about if you want to reach out to us later, we can definitely do that too, right? So yeah, Q&A session. In the end, please put your questions on the Q&A window. All right. Before we get started, a quick introduction about Crackverbal. So Crackverbal is a test prep and an admission consulting company. We have helped students get into top schools across the world. You can go to our website, crackverbal.com, and get more information about what all we do and how we go about it. So if you guys are looking at help for GMAT or MBA, please reach out to us. We would definitely love to help you, and we would love to be part of your journey too, right? So thank you so much for joining this webinar too. All right. So before, my first question to Harish now is, this is my agenda for today. Okay, I'm going to, it's going to be more like a Q&A session, and I want to focus on your entire journey and get the most, of what your experience has been. So if you could just first tell us a little bit more about your background. So you told us you're an engineer, chemical engineer from India. So you did your engineering from Hyderabad, right?
That's right. So I did my bachelor's in chemical engineering from Usmania University in Hyderabad.
Mm-hmm.
Thereafter, right after my graduation, I moved to the US to pursue my master's. I've done my master's in chemical engineering from University of Pennsylvania.
Mm.
I've had few years of work experience in consulting, but primarily on the technical side of it, focused around oil and gas and petrochemicals.
Okay.
After that, moved to Saudi Arabia. I'll get into the details as to why I did so. And in 2017, decided to pursue my MBA after about close to 7 to 8 years of experience, or 9 years of experience. I decided to shift my career and transition slowly onto the business side. So I felt MBA is the right path to do so, and did my MBA at Cambridge, and rejoined Saudi Aramco, moving from the project side to the strategy side. So now I'm in the business strategy side of the Aramco Petrochemicals, and I primarily look after day-to-day aspects. Typically include looking at the strategic plans, investment plan, or everything related to Saudi Aramco Petrochemicals.
Right. I have a question. I want to go slightly more after your master's, right? So typically, I think after your engineering master's was like a gradual progression that you might have looked at, right? That after your engineering, you want to do masters. What was your role after masters? So you had 9 years of experience before you actually thought of doing an MBA, right? So was it more from a technical aspect of it? Were you part of these big refineries or manufacturing units? What did you actually do in a technical role?
So essentially, I right after masters, my specialization was primarily in the polymers side of the business. Mm-hmm. So although my master's is in chemical engineering, I took up a major and a specialization in polymers. Mm-hmm. So as you're quite aware, in the US, the hub of petrochemicals or oil and gas is based in Texas. So I had to relocate from Pennsylvania to Texas, wherein I joined a consulting firm, which was primarily focused around providing technical solutions to all these majors, such as the refineries, petrochemicals based out of Texas. We were also expanding into the international forum, where we were, although Asia or other regions were quite limited in terms of expansions, US was in the core of the expansion phase. But as things progressed, we could expand into the international forum, and I was also providing solutions to the international clients, be it based in Thailand, China, Europe, Middle East, and everywhere else.
Right. So, Harish, typically what happens is, when you've already done your master's and you're already in this great career progression path, working with big companies, traveling, people don't really think of doing an MBA at that time. And, your decision to do it was also slightly longer, right? So did you start thinking about it when you were like 5 to 6 years experience after your master's, or, what was your thought process at that time?
Sure. So right after joining the firm, within 1 to 2 years, I realized where I was going to end up after maybe 10 years down the lane in the technical side of the business or technical part. So I realized one way of either transitioning onto the business side, or you could say progressing in terms of the career, was to do an MBA, and that too from a very reputed college. Now, after 3 years, I've been thinking about doing an MBA after 2 years of my work experience, but I realized I needed more experience. in addition to that, I also needed some financial stability because I've done a master's and I had a huge debt. So I wanted to make sure that I clear off that debt, lay out a clear plan as to how do I get into the top reputed college. And I would assume myself to be an average student. So I had to do something extraordinary, or had to have something extraordinary on my application in order to boost my chances to get into a reputed college. So
Right.
that's when I decided that after about 4 years of my experience in the US, I decided to get some international work experience. And that's how I transitioned to the Middle East. So in the Middle East, while I was doing this project side, mainly on the technical side, what boosted my application was the different geographies I've been exposed to and the different people and the work cultures that I was capable of handling in terms of teams, as well as teams that I could work with on an international platform. So this, I couldn't leave the company within 1 or 2 years of joining. So I made sure that I prolonged it a little bit. Although if I had to go back in time, I would have done it earlier, but no regrets on that, because it gave me more financial stability. So that's a good thing. But I had to make sure that I had the right number of years of experience. At the same time, there was some kind of a trust developed, and people could highly recommend me when it comes to my application towards a good B school. So this was my thought process and my planning before joining Cambridge MBA.
Right, right. So, curious that you said that you mentioned that you want an international experience, right? You were already in US. You were already working in a global scale. Why did you feel it was not international enough for you at that point?
Well, so as I said, I would consider myself as an average student with mostly background in terms of education and few extracurricular activities. But in order to place myself in the top B schools, and I was targeting only the top B schools, like which were ranked in the top 10. Now, in order to boost my chances, although I had the experience of moving from India to the US, if I was applying to the US schools, then I would have been considered as a candidate applying from the US itself. So, in terms of the diversity or the international diversity that they were looking at, I felt like, when I did my own research, I felt in order to boost my chances, and in terms of looking at the profiles of the people coming in, students coming into the B school, they had limited number coming from the Middle East, or remote areas of, let's say, Vietnam and those kind of places. So when I was trying to move out of the US in order to boost my chances, I picked and chose those places from where there were limited number of students, so that I could bring in my own perspective into the classroom discussion. I wanted to kind of, if I could say, keep myself in a very good position where I'm not one of the 1,000 people that is just sitting in the class, but also bring in a perspective that not everyone can bring into the discussion. So all these aspects, all these plans help me, or help me decide that, US, although I was working and I was in a good position, but in order to get into the MBA B school, I had to do something very peculiar, or very, things that could strengthen my application. And
Right.
I only picked the countries or places where there were people representing, in a very limited number.
Right, right. So what I understand is, at least couple of years before you started planning, or your first major reason was making sure that you're financially at a stable situation to actually go ahead and afford another MBA.
Mhm.
And the second aspect was that you also wanted to figure out that you have enough time to build your profile also, so that you can, make it to the top schools.
Yes, absolutely.
Right. So, whenever it comes to MBA, there's always GMAT and preparation, and there's a lot of, especially with working professionals, it's very difficult, right? They are working and they are preparing for the test. How easy or difficult was it for you? Since you've been, you kept saying you're not a very great student, so I want to know that from that perspective too.
So honestly, I'm sure there are a lot of MBA aspirants who are brighter than me. But what I've done is typically over in the Middle East, as the weather's quite extreme, our day starts quite early in the morning, at about 7 a.m. So I had to get started to work at about 5:30 in the morning, and then we're done by 4 p.m. So by the time I reach back home, it used to be about 5.
Right.
And my daily routine used to be that I used to have a snack, and then from 6 till about 10:30 in the night, I used to end up staying in the library, work towards getting a good GMAT score. And I've done this within a span of about 3 months, I would say. So 3 months of no socializing, no going out, no watching movies, and I was fully dedicated to getting a good GMAT score. Yeah, 3 months of hard work, I guess, bared some fruits. So yeah, it was a good experience, but it was quite painful for those 3 months.
I'm sure, and I'm sure a lot of people who are listening to us also agree that it's not easy at all. But yeah, we have to bite the bullet anyway, right? So, so that's very interesting. So now that you've taken your GMAT, so what was the score that you applied with?
So I believe if it's been about 6 years now, but if I remember it right, it was about 710 or 720, if I'm not wrong.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah, 6 years
but
ago, that was a very good score.
okay, thank you.
Right. So, how did you go about selecting where to apply? Since did you not think of US as an option, or were you evaluating US and other geographies also as an option?
So in fact, it's quite interesting. If I remember it now, the only B school that I've applied to outside the US was Cambridge. And uh, I applied to more B schools in the US. And for somehow, I was a bit pessimistic based on my profile that I wouldn't get into the top three, like the Harvards, MITs, or the Stanfords. So I started applying to other ones like Cornell, and I've got into Cornell. But what I was evaluating was also to look at a 1-year MBA because of the time I would dedicate towards an MBA, and I would stay away from my job or my employment. So when I got an admit from Cambridge, it was quite easy for me to make a decision because of the financial constraints and the financial strain I would have on my bank balance. And also, it is a 1-year MBA, and at that time, ranking also did matter to me. So Cambridge at that point of time was ranked number 5 by Financial Times. So it was quite easy for me to make a decision amongst the admits that I've got as to which one to choose. And the second criteria was also that I've never explored Europe from a geographical standpoint, and felt like, again, the international exposure within 4 geographies would boost my employment or my chances whenever I want to pursue a different career or want to relocate to a different place.
Right. So, before you applied, what was the kind of research that you put into your application part? I want to tell the people who are listening to us is Harish is also a mentor at Crack Verbal, so he comes with a lot of experience from that perspective too. So, more from I want to understand from your background that what kind of research did you actually put in, because a lot of people who are listening to us might be people who are actually in the process of applying to top schools this year. So how should they approach and how should they go about it?
Sure. So the way I've approached these B schools is that, first of all, I chalked out
Your voice is
plan
breaking.
for myself as to when. Can you hear me now?
Yeah,
Is
I
it
can, but somewhere it was breaking. It's fine now.
okay? So what I was saying was that I drew a plan as to what I wanted to do right after my MBA, post MBA plans, and then put some boundaries around what I wanted to do as well. So firstly, I drew a plan around how much I wanted to spend for my MBA. Second, post MBA career choices that they have and listed in the employment reports, and also spoke to several alumni. So in terms of the specific research that I've done, I haven't targeted speaking to a lot of alumni. What I've done is I've spoken to alumni that are quite specific to my industrial background, my specific background, and understand from them as to what makes that particular B school different for someone who wants to pursue a career in the energy industry. That's where my focus was. And what are the chances? What are the post MBA employment opportunities? Where do they typically place these kind of candidates? And in the long term, how do they see in terms of career progression for people who have come with an MBA from XYZ school? So these are some of the typical things that I've done for all of the B schools that I've applied to. The other specific things related to each B school, which was quite peculiar, was in terms of the things that I wanted to learn while I was at MBA. So although post MBA employment is a very important aspect, but there are also certain things that I wanted to understand. For example, in case of Cambridge, another reason why I've chosen Cambridge is because it's quite close to London, and London is considered as one of the financial capitals of the world. Now, I wanted to get some. If you see across my experience, most of it has been focused around chemical engineering or engineering in specific. So I knew once I come back from, I wanted to essentially do the strategy role itself. So I knew I would have limited chances thereafter to get some financial experience. So the way I've done my research and planned it is I would do a 1 year MBA, thereafter get at least 3 to 6 months of financial experience, or see how it works out for me. Would that be of an interest to me? And thereafter go back into my energy industry so that I have a overall grip of be it financial side, be it technical side, be it commercial side, all understanding of the business as a whole. And this would help me at a later point of time whenever I'm handling a project or a business together. So this was my research, very, very specific to each school, and in particular Cambridge, because this was my plan to do transitioning between my post MBA to getting into a full-time job that I wanted to pursue throughout my life.
Right. So, were you very clear that energy is the industry that you want to, continue on even after your MBA, or you were open to thinking that maybe you would want to look at some other options too?
No, in fact, I was very, very particular and clear that I wanted to only get into the energy industry because, I've invested too much in terms of my time as well as money in the energy industry. So I didn't want to start from a scratch. I would have probably done that if I only had about 2-3 years of experience and done my 3 to 5 years of experience and done my MBA. And then if I wanted to transition into a tech company or another company, then I would have done that. But I've invested too much time and I didn't want to start from a scratch. So I was very, very clear in terms of, post MBA career,
Right.
even in the long-term basis.
Right, right. My next question is, when people think about strategy, right? It's a lot of. So, say for example, when they are working, they are not really involved in actually taking very strong strategic decisions, right? The whole
Mhm.
understanding is that you have to be at a role, at a decision maker role, where you actually are given the option or the flexibility to or the opportunity to take such decisions. How do you, when somebody says, I want a career in strategy, or I want to become a strategy consultant after an MBA, what are the things that typically, a B school looks for when somebody, writes something like this on their application? Or I'll start with what B schools look for, and then maybe I'll get into what recruiters look for. So, what goes in the mind of a B school when somebody says, I want to become a strategy consultant, and what are the key things that they should be focusing or they should be highlighting when they're actually talking about something like this?
Sure. So you're absolutely right, Sri. When someone says strategy, in fact, when I'm in this kind of role, I see on a day-to-day basis that, although we don't realize, every aspect of the business implement strategy at some point of the time, knowingly or unknowingly. However, now that companies have created this specific strategy departments or strategy roles specifically, now it's the responsibility of these people to kind of shape the business and also show the direction as to where this particular business needs to go. Now, when someone is applying for a B school and they want to say that I want to get into, let's take an example of a strategy consulting. Although I'll talk a little bit more as to what are the different options available apart from the consulting side as well. But while you're applying to the B school, yes, it is quite important for someone to first understand what is their immediate goal. Why do they believe that they would be a good fit into the strategy consulting, wherein you can convince, although they don't have any experience prior to that, but the whole point is in your essays or in your application, you have enough justification to convince your admissions committee that you can transition easily into a strategy consulting role. So the kind of, for example, if there's an essay about, let's say, what research have you done? So it, in terms of the approach that one has taken in answering that question, or one has done in terms of research, in terms of numbers that they've put together, that all provides a good view whether this particular candidate is a good fit for strategy specific roles or not. How you tackle these essays and the approach that you have taken to tackle this issue is all you do post MBA as well, or in your strategy roles thereafter. So if the admissions committee strongly believes that this candidate has what it takes to get him into a strategy role, then it is quite evident from the application itself in terms of the approach that one takes.
Right.
Now, when you've talked about the recruiting side of the business or recruiting side of the application, once you're done with your application, you've got into a B school. Now, this is where the grind actually starts, where the case studies and the case interviews form the core of any strategy role. This is the aspect where one practicing case studies and case interviews with fellow students or with mentors or with alumni. And this is where every B school makes the B school that one gets into makes a difference. For example, from a Cambridge perspective, I can talk about things that my career services team has done for me. So they have laid out a plan. Once I've told them that I want to get into strategy roles, they have clearly laid out a plan that, okay, Harish, these are the different things that you need to do, and these are the resources available. It is up to the candidate or the student to take opportunities and take advantage of these resources. The resources include one-on-one sessions with mentors who are ex-BCG, ex-McKinsey guys. And these are free of charge. And, you could schedule time with them wherein you get first-hand experience. Second is with the students itself. So we had a class size of about 207 people or 208. And
I believe about 80 to 90 of them wanted to get into strategy roles. Now, these 80 to 90 people help each other. And this is the good part about the B school, that they do not actually consider each one as a competitor, but this is more of working as a team together to get into the interview part. And once you get to the interview part, this whole practicing of case studies and everything would ease out and would make things much better for you, because as the proverb is, as the saying is, practice makes a man perfect. I absolutely agree. In terms of case studies or case interviews, this is absolutely important. The more number of cases you do, the much better it is, because from my personal experience, there have been situations in McKinsey interview, for example, they will ask you a out of the blue question that you haven't expected, because as some of them might have experienced, there is a framework for every kind of a case interview. Now, out of the blue, they ask about demographics or something that you haven't thought about at all. But these practice, what it does is it gives you some ideas. It gives you the loopholes of looking at yourself. It gives you some of the weaknesses that you need to work on. An honest opinion that or a critique of what you're good at, what you're not good at, what you should be practicing at. So once you shape all of these things together, it is quite easy for you to get into the recruiting mode, where all these consultants or all these big consulting firms that are looking for candidate, no matter how good you are technically, the core of the interview is always a case interview. So within those 1 year or 2 years MBA that one student has to spend at the B school, I would say in a week, at least one has to spend about 5 to 10 hours on case interview practice. And this is the core of any interview that they might want to apply later.
Right. So tell us a little bit more about your MBA journey to, more about the cohort that you were part of, the diversity aspect of it, and, how was the whole course even structured? Was it like you expected it to be, or was it completely different, or did you expect the kind of challenges you thought you would face, or, a little bit more about that from that perspective?
Sure. So initially when I got a confirmation about the course and nervous, first of all. But when so once I got to know about students and their backgrounds, it was one of the best experiences that I've had. If I could live it again, I would do it again and again, because this is the 1 year where you get to know different nationalities, people from different nationalities. For example, in the MBA class of Cambridge, we had about, as I said, 208 people representing about 47 countries. Some of them from the remotest areas possible. Some of the countries that you're not even aware they exist. So the cultures that they come from, the backgrounds that they come from. So it was a fantastic experience of interacting with these people, knowing them professionally as well as personally. Excuse me. And some of these people were extraordinary people. Like as I said, some of them were Olympians, so they've represented their countries in Olympics. Some of them were, MPs or member of parliaments. So it was a very diverse classroom, and I thought initially, because of the Cambridge brand that we have, I'm going to learn a lot from the professors, and it is going to be the best. I'm going to be learning from the best in class, and I'm going to be one of those top-rated people or top-rated class from different aspects. But to my surprise, I've learned a lot more from the students rather than the professors. And people might, or most of the candidates would agree with me, because the professors go with a certain approach, assuming that XYZ people have at least a minimal experience in these particular courses. And then, sometimes you cannot catch up with their pace for whatever reason. But the classmates, they go to the next level and help you out in teaching you beyond the classroom, telling you some quick tips and quick tricks also, in order to handle such cases or some interesting problems. They help you go through a process that could ease your understanding. So the first term honestly was one of the toughest ones, because of the courses. I've never taken such like accounting or corporate finance. I've never been closely associated with such kind of things in my past. So it was a bit of a shock to me at the pace at which the professors were carrying on, because we had people from investment banking background, private equity background. So they were going at a different pace. And all I could do was look blank in the classroom. So every night I used to sit with my friend and make sure that I understand every aspect that the professor has done. And he used to take out his time, spend time till like 2 a.m., 3 a.m., help me understand all these things. So the big surprise to me was the classmates that I've got, and the classroom experience that I've got. So apart from this, I would say on every aspect that I was expecting, Cambridge MBA has always gone beyond what my expectations were. And in terms of the course structure, so the two best things in the core MBA course was the CVP and the GCP. What the CVP and the GCP is, in the first term, we have something called the Cambridge Venture Project, where we work with so typically the Cambridge MBA is divided amongst 3 terms. And then we have the 4th term, which is like a summer internship or Six Sigma kind of a term. Now the core courses are taught between these 3 terms, and wherein the first term has something called the Cambridge Venture Project, wherein we are associated with a startup, be it in Cambridge, be it in London or outside of the UK, Europe, anywhere. So these startups come to Cambridge at the beginning of the term. They tell you a particular problem they want the students to handle. And within about 5 weeks, I would say 5 to 6 weeks, you have to come up with it's pretty much like a market research that you do and identify business opportunities as to where these particular startups could engage into or delve into in order to push their top line revenues. So this was a fantastic experience where I was working with a fintech company, a payments company actually. So they were trying to look into getting into new business verticals. So this gave me a very good first-hand experience of working with startups. And the second one was a GCP, which is the best in the whole MBA year. So this GCP is where you work with an actual existing company. The existing company, what it does is it approaches you. It could range from an industrial company, industrial manufacturer, to a finance or a startup as well. And the type of companies I can highlight is we have had Lamborghini, we have had JLR, LSE, London Stock Exchange, some of the big wigs that one can think of. So this was where I had the best experience of working with the company itself, with the heads of the companies, providing solutions to them from the problems that they've highlighted, and actually see the implementation as well. So within the 6-week timeline that we are given, we actually end up traveling to the actual location. In my case, I've traveled to Kenya. So we have divided. The team is typically composed of about 4 to 5 people, where we divide different geographies. And the problem that has been highlighted to us, we pick the geographies and end up doing on-site interviews, on-site research, and on-site real hand experience, and come back and provide the solution that is implemented later on. And we get to see how it's implemented as well. So throughout, we end up building a relationship with that company. And interestingly, some candidates or some students have also ended up in those companies for a full-time job as well.
Right.
So this was the best experience in the whole MBA.
Right. Awesome. So does everyone in the class get opportunities to do like a CVP or a GCP project, or do you opt for it separately?
So for the CVP, you're allotted that. So once a study group is created with 5 people, your study group is allotted a specific startup. So in the CVP case, you don't have a choice to pick your own company.
Right.
In the GCP case, these companies come to Cambridge and pitch their problems. Now you're given a choice to pick any company that you want. You give first, second, and third priority. And depending on the choices of the different students, and the backgrounds, as well as the post-MBA careers that you want to pursue, you're allocated that particular company. There have always also been situations where certain companies, students have themselves approached these specific companies, and they've got a GCP out of that. So not every company in the world comes to Cambridge and provides their GCP or wants to do consulting with us. So what they have done is, again, students were quite smart and they planned pretty well in such a way that they did their GCP in the company where they wanted to end up in a full-time role. So they've been successful in sourcing these GCP projects through alumni, through contacts, through networking, and through the Cambridge Career Services team. And so some of them have been quite successful in getting into those roles that they were interested in.
Right. So there's always one thought that everybody has when they are looking at applying to a foreign school. They feel that the job opportunities that they get are mostly, the first option is mostly in that particular country, right? So while, just when you're out of college, do you have an option to apply to other countries, or how do you go about the entire job scenario part, and how easy or difficult is it for maybe in UK when you were there? I think they didn't even have the 2-year work visa that they have today, right?
Yes.
So how was it different, or generally how does it work? Like, do I get an option if I am an MBA from Cambridge? Do I have an option to apply to Saudi Aramco directly, or how does that work if I want to apply to foreign countries or in that particular country also? How does the whole job process work?
Yes, a very interesting question, and this is something that very few people probably know. Once they get to know this only after joining the B school. What happens is, when the consulting firms, especially talking about the strategy consulting firms like the MBBs, McKinsey's, Bain's, and the BCGs, when they come to the B school for interviewing, they give you a specific code in order for them to differentiate that you have come from Judge or INSEAD or something else. So what happens is, they ask you to pick locations as well. Now, London is an obvious default choice, but your location is quite dependent on what your background is. Like, for example, if you've studied in India, then one of the locations that you could put is Indian office location. Or the second thing is, whether if you've worked in a different country, then you could pick that location as well. But they specifically mentioned that you can only pick the geographies or the locations wherein you have at least been in that country because of your educational background, or you've worked in that country because of your transition, or because of your work experience, Or third is an aspect where you at least have the fluency in a language where you're trying to apply to. So if someone if someone wants to pursue a career in Germany, it is extremely important that you have fluency both in reading as well as speaking in German language. So you are not allowed to apply beyond these, and if you apply, then there's a high probability that these applications would be rejected. The
Right.
only exceptions for these cases, the three cases that I've highlighted, is Dubai and Riyadh.
Right.
So in the office, because it's the Dubai is one of the hubs of consulting for the entire Middle East region.
Mm.
So language requirement or previous experience in India, or so previous experience in that country, or even work experience in that country is not needed.
Right.
At least this was the case when I was working, or I was interviewing with these companies. So these things are specifically highlighted during their career sessions when they come on campus. So these are few things that not many people are aware before approaching the B school. So what my advice to students would be who are MBA aspirers is, if you have a chance and if you still have time, then try to start learning a language that you eventually want to end up, let's say specifically in Europe. Language is a big barrier for anyone who wants to enter European region. So if possible, whichever country that one wants to eventually end their start their career, then it would be very, very, very helpful or slightly easier for them to get into that country if they can learn that language. So that is one piece of advice I would definitely give.
Right, right. I had one question that came up from the job perspective also. So, how does it work? At Judge. So, do you have like a time? Is it the last semester or the last term that decides where you're going to eventually work, or when do you actually start applying for jobs, and how does that work? Like, for example, in India we have a placement day 0 and day 1 and all that, right? So how does it work? We always say that there's no placement kind of a thing, but there is a career services that enables you to network and reach out to companies and alumni and get jobs. So when does this whole process start? And is it like by the last term you should you normally most people have a job? How does that work?
Yeah, so this is another interesting question, and I'll tell you a very specific example which was quite interesting to me. Is even before we started our first day at MBA, the Bain application already closed by then. So it was that early that these consulting firms start recruiting people. So typically what happened was, from, I would say, around 20 days or a month from when we started our MBA, there were career sessions almost every day. So we started in September, specifically on September 9th, I remember. And I would say about around starting mid of October, we had career sessions, employer sessions every day. And that, it was quite difficult for us because we had to wear a suit every day pretty much. And we were in suits right from morning 9 a.m. till like 9 p.m., which was not easy every day to wear the same suit, or I have two multiple suits for 15, 20 days. Now, what these companies do is they come and give you a info session, and typically they start screening the applications around October time frame, and they start conducting interviews in the November time frame. And by December, they do the on-site interviews, especially the consulting firms. They do the on-site interview wherever, whichever specific location. If it's in India, they ask you to come to Delhi or Bangalore. If it's in Dubai that you've picked and you've been chosen for that office location, they fly you to Dubai. So these happen during the December timeframe, and by end of December, you get to know some of the results. Some of the classmates are already placed in this consulting firm. Now, for the ones that are more leisurely applied, I would say they start in the January, February timeframe, where interviews happen through the time around Aprilish. And then eventually it's on a rolling basis that people get invited for interviews and people get recruited on a rolling basis because of the type of firms that come, be it healthcare or be it finance companies. So they have their own deadlines. But for the top consulting firms, they're typically done during the first term of MBA itself.
Right, right. Interesting. So more from the strategy role perspective, what are the other kind of opportunities that people can get into when it comes to strategy? So one is obviously consulting. Second is like the role that you are into, which is business strategy. Are there other options, or how is this looked at?
Absolutely. And this is another aspect. When someone thinks about strategy only, they think about strategy consulting, and in particular only McKinsey's, Bain's or BCG's. So what I want to clarify is that, first of all, the second tier, if I may call them, are also very good or very big in terms of learning curve that one can get out of it. And beyond that, there are certain aspects that now companies have started their own in-house consulting. Like BASF has its own in-house consulting, Siemens has its own in-house consulting, Bayer has its own in-house consulting. So although you might miss out on working with different firms, being in a consultant role, what you do amongst these in-house consulting roles is you engage with different departments and different functions, and you pretty much do the same work that you do in a strategy consulting role at McKinsey or BCG. So this is a very, very interesting aspect where you have good work-life balance. At the same time, you get the same experience as one gets in working in a strategy consulting firm. And the third is the exposure you get to the senior management. So if you're working in a strategy consulting role, you might be working in the back end. But if you're working in the in-house consulting of these multinational companies, then you are directly exposed to the senior management, the CFOs, the CXOs or CIOs, and you can lay a platform for your career growth, wherein you could skip some of the steps in terms of your career ladder, or your growth would be exponential. And eventually, once you want to settle down, because you'll be exposed to so many functions and so many geographies within the company, once you decide as to what is best for you, you have the opportunity to go into that particular function, because the people in that function know you, you've worked with them, you know what your expectations are and what their expectations are, and accordingly you could progress rather than going into a new company or going into a new function that you're unaware of. So this is one unexplored area, if I may say. And majority of the companies are now coming up with this in-house consulting rather than depending on external consultants for providing their views or providing their subjective knowledge.
Right. One last question, Harish, before I get to the question and answers that people have posted on the Q&A. How has MBA changed you? What is Harish when he was a pure technical guy focused on the energy sector? The kind of consulting was majorly on your technical expertise, whereas now your role is completely different, right? So your contribution is more around different kind of business problems that you have to address, right? So how has an MBA changed you more from a as a person, and how has your perspective changed?
I would definitely say there's a before and after for sure, and every candidate or every student will definitely have a before and after, after an MBA. Because before an MBA, I honestly speaking, because of my lack of business knowledge or lack of financial knowledge, I would say I was more focused and I was cornered into the technical aspect of the business. I was never involved in things beyond my scope of work. Now, with an MBA and with an overall experience from a business standpoint, now I can handle situations or aspects that can tackle technical, commercial, as well as financial side of the aspect. So now, for example, my manager or my senior management people can rely on me saying that Harish can do this job and we don't need three people doing each one individually. So he can, as a whole, come up with a solution for this particular aspect because he has what it requires to come up with a solution. Now, how an MBA has changed me personally is that definitely it has taught me from a knowledge perspective. It has taught me a lot. Now, network wise, I have a wider network now. What happens these days is if I travel to a specific country, I don't end up being in a hotel anymore. I end up staying at my friend's place because there are students who have represented 47 countries. So I'm pretty sure someone has ended up there itself, or they've gone back to their home country. So that's the benefit that I get these days, that I don't have to spend for my hotels or accommodation. The third thing is that it has shaped me personally in terms of how to approach, how to connect, and how to deal with senior management people. Because most of them, what I've realized after an MBA is that most of them do not have the technical background, so they only want to hear the essence of what is the problem and what is the solution. And prior to this, I did not have the kind of experience or the knowledge to handle such questions, honestly. And also did not have the experience to say what is expected out of a presentation, for example. So these are the kind of soft skills, if I may say, that MBA has taught, apart from those tangible as well as intangible benefits that innumerable ones that I cannot explicitly say each one. But yes, I would strongly recommend everyone to take up an MBA, whether they have had the experience of business or commercial. But definitely it gives you the opportunity to introspect and see what are the things that need to shape up in your life, and how to tackle situations extremely extremely pressurized or stressful situations. So these are all the, I mean what happens is it can't be more stressful than what you do in a 1 year MBA. So that's one thing that I've learned. You end up staying in the school, you're away from the family life almost from 9 a.m. till like 10 p.m. and you just go back home to sleep or have your dinner. So you are pretty much engaged and in discussions. You don't think about anything else apart from doing these case competitions, doing these interviews, doing this what are you learning from each one, what is their background, if they have some kind of knowledge on that particular company, what are the insights of that company, how to tackle the recruiters in that company. So these are the day in and day out things that you learn at MBA. I don't think you get any this kind of experience outside of the MBA.
Right, right. Was it overwhelming for you at some time?
It was initially. The first term was quite overwhelming because although it's a collaborative work, but it's also a competition. Everyone wants to do better than the other. Now, as soon as one gets into the, I was expecting a slow transition from going from a slow day-to-day life to, okay, I knew the pace would catch up, but I wasn't expecting the pace at which on day one itself, people would start talking about case competitions. They would say, okay, we need to, there are deadlines for these case competitions. So let's handle these, let's tackle these. I was overwhelmed saying, okay, what am I getting into? And I have no idea about these things. So the first 1 month, I would say, was quite difficult mentally for me. More than the physical work, it was quite difficult mentally. But once you get into that phase, you transition into that, and you also say, okay, if I have an off day or if I have a free day, then you probably would think to yourself, what is wrong with me? Why am I not working on something, or I should be doing something else? So you get into that mode.
Right, right. Cool. Thank you so much, Harish. This was extremely informative. I'm sure others also, agree with me on this point. What I'll do now is let me just quickly go through all the questions. There's some really interesting questions too. So the first question here is, what were the key differentiators for you to decide between an MBA from an Oxford versus Cambridge? Did you think of Oxford as an option?
Well, very interesting, and I wouldn't go into too many details because I'm sure people know about the rivalry between Cambridge and Oxford. But I'll talk about the things that I have factored in. So, although it doesn't matter much now, what I've realized after that is the ranking part. So, at that time, as I highlighted, Cambridge was ranked number 5 in the world by Financial Times. So that played a key role as to why I wanted to, as I previously mentioned, I wanted to get into the top B schools. So that was one factor. Second thing was the 1-year MBA, which not many schools offer. In UK, I believe only Cambridge, Oxford, or maybe a few other colleges offer that. The third thing was Cambridge specifically is known as a startup capital within the UK. So I looked at not just from a Cambridge standpoint, but not from a university standpoint, but from a Cambridge city standpoint as well, as to what are the companies located around Cambridge, and they had some of the big names like ARM is located over there, the headquarters over there. Then they had AstraZeneca, and then some of the healthcare firms. Microsoft and Amazon were opening up their offices. So these definitely played a role wherein I wanted to be closer to these companies, some of the big names that you hear on a day-to-day basis, and see if I get any opportunity to work with them. Although I wasn't interested in looking for a full-time role in these companies, but any opportunity or any interaction, even a coffee chat with someone from Microsoft who was working on, let's say, one of the Windows Surface laptop. A coffee chat with him would help me give an understanding as to what are the challenges one might face, what are the processes. So these are the kinds of things that I was looking for, and I felt Cambridge was rightly placed geographically. Rightly placed geographically. So this was one of the reasons that I've taken up Cambridge MBA versus some of the other schools. So I won't go into the details of the other schools.
Yeah, fair enough. So there's one more question. Okay, this might be slightly prescriptive, maybe, I don't know. What kind of skill upgradation do you think we should do prior to applying to a B school, especially when I want to look at pursuing something into strategy?
Oof, this is a tough question, and it's quite a subjective question. It depends is an answer that I would give, because each personality, each background is quite different. So one has to introspect and one has to self-evaluate and understand what are the things that one needs to gain in terms of skill set in order to get into some of these strategy firms. So a piece of advice would be start, if you have plans to do your MBA and get into a strategy consulting, then always engage through your LinkedIn profile or through your network, alumni of your existing schools. Start engaging with them and understand as to what are the skill set that these companies are looking for. And if you already have this, well and good, sharpen it. But if you do not, then you at least have the time to start getting the basics of this, or you have the time to sharpen these skills, and eventually once you do MBA, your path is quite clear.
Right. Awesome. One more question here.
Hello?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
Oh. So there's one more question here which says, I'm currently in a sales role in a software startup. Is my pre-MBA role detrimental to transitioning into a strategy role?
Not at all. Not at all. I think whoever asked this question at least is in a better position than what I was in. Because I would personally bring up my example. I was in a very, very technical specific role. So imagine me moving from a technical specific role into a strategy role. If I can do it, I think he or she who is in a sales position definitely has the skill set. So I would say consulting is looking for a diverse set of people who have sales background, people who have marketing background, people who have technical background. So do not believe, I strongly believe everyone has an equal chance. It's all about your approach to get into these firms.
Right. Rahil, if there are any questions on YouTube, maybe you could post it on chat. Otherwise, most of the other questions are things that we've already answered. One question was more around essential skills that needs to be to transition into strategy, which I think we already addressed. How does the recruitment strategy happen in Europe? That's also something that Harish did address. There's one more question by someone who says, I have 11 years experience in oil and gas industry. My experience is primarily in operations and as a field specialist. Would it be possible for me to switch my function and role to, say, a financial and strategy outside the oil and gas industry?
Very interesting and tough question to answer. Understanding of the profile as a whole. So work experience itself is not the primary factor. There are several other factors one looks at. Although I would say, typically strategy consulting roles are looking for people with a work experience of about 5 to 6 years. For general consultants experience, if he wants to get into consulting, then it has to be more of a management consulting, where they are looking for people with a very specific technical background, operations background, or any kind of specific roles. So general consulting roles might be slightly more difficult, but it's not impossible. I've seen situations where people with 15 years have got into consulting roles. It's all about how certain requirements of these companies. You never know what the requirements are in a particular location. So it's also sometimes it's luck. It depends on what specific roles you're applying to. But each profile is categorized differently. So everyone has, as I said, everyone has equal chances. One might have slightly more chances because he's in the right requirement, period or time frame, versus someone else who might have to work harder in order to get into these firms.
Right. Harish, last question, and then we can conclude. There's someone who said, did you have anyone in your class who had already done an MBA and had come from a second MBA? How do people with a second MBA address their, reason for doing another MBA?
Honestly, I haven't come across that kind of a situation where people have had MBAs earlier, but the situations have been that people have had PhDs or master's degree. So I haven't come across any such situation. But I wouldn't believe this would be a deterring factor. But again, it is completely dependent on what the profile is, what they have done, what their achievements are. So this could play a different factor otherwise.
Right. So in fact, specifically on that question, if you have done an MBA from India, and typically most people who've done an MBA from India are, you would have done immediately after your graduation. There is always this thing that, when you do MBA immediately after your graduation, you actually have not tasted corporate world, right? So the MBA becomes more like a set of topics or subjects for you. Whereas now, after some years of experience, after working, do you do an MBA, the whole experience, or each topic or each subject, like Harish mentioned about case studies and case interviews, there is a lot of value add that you can provide when you are looking at doing an second MBA at that point, right? And obviously international exposure and all those aspects also come into play when you're talking about that, right? So there are various ways of addressing it, and there are many people who have done that before, so you're definitely not the only one, right? So that's about it from now. I just want to talk a little bit about our upcoming webinar. So we have another webinar on 17th of October, which is about especially people who are preparing for your GMAT. You can look at how to prepare and have the best out of that 2 hours that you're going to spend on your exam, and that's taken by our founder, Mr. Arun Jagannathan. We also have the second episode of this series on the 29th. So this was our first series where we wanted to talk about MBA, post MBA roles in strategy after an MBA, and we have Gauhar, who's going to talk about program management after an MBA. He's an MBA from London Business School. So looking forward to you guys, being as part of that webinar too. Spread the word, and thank you so much, Harish, for being part of this webinar. This was so insightful. I learned a lot, and I'm sure everybody who was listening to this also learned a lot. And in fact, so much of in-depth detail that you gave in terms of consulting roles and and other options in strategy that we can think of, other than just looking at strategy consulting and MBBs and top big fours and things like that. So thank you so much. Really appreciate your time, and this was invaluable for us. Hello. Harish, I think your video is stuck.
Oh,
yeah, maybe you could just closing remarks.
Can you see me?
I can't see you, but I can hear you.
Okay. Sorry about that. But okay. So I'll just for taking out the time and on the strategy side, I hope I was helpful in providing some insights to most of the MBA aspirants who want to get into strategy consulting. And I also want to thank the entire team of Crack Verbal for organizing such webinars. I wish I had such kind of insightful webinars back in the time when I was applying. I would have definitely loved such kind of insights, and more and more details about the post MBA careers or the work that some of the alum are doing. This is extremely helpful, and I hope all the students or the candidates that want to get into the top B schools take key notes of all of these insights that different people are talking about, and apply to their admission, apply to their applications or essays. And I just hope all of them get into the best possible B schools for wherever across the world, and accomplish their goals that they have post MBA.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Harish. That was awesome, and thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And definitely we'll catch you again for something even more, something that we can, pick your brains on again. So thank you so much for an awesome session.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I hope this was helpful. Please do write to us, WhatsApp us, email us, Instagram us, or whatever other social media us. And we would love to help you and love to be part of your journey too. Thank you so much, Harish. Have a good day and have a good Friday.
Thank you. And you too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Take care.